A hearty good morning and welcome on this beautiful day. Whomever you are, and irrespective of whether you're present here or at home, know this: you are welcome here. No matter your age, your size, the color of your eyes, or your skin, know this: you are welcome here. No matter how you came here, alone or with others, you are welcome here. No matter whom you love, or how you speak, or whatever your abilities, you are welcome here. Whether you come with laughter in your heart or tears in your eyes, you are welcome here. If you come here with an open mind, a loving heart, and willing hands, then you are indeed welcome here at the First Unitarian Church of Wilmington. My name is Ed Ostrom, and I'm truly pleased to be your worship associate this morning. Before lighting the chalice this morning, I would sadly want to announce the passing of Anne Stanford, the mother of our member Leslie Stanford, who this week has passed away. A memorial service will be held at this church on Saturday, June 11th at 2 p.m., and there will be further details in the e-newsletter. May Leslie and her family feel surrounded by the warmth and care of this community during this time of loss. Tomorrow is Memorial Day. Yesterday, as I departed from a conversation with a friend, he said, "Have a happy Memorial Day." Those words did not ring well with me. Yes, I'm happy to be free. I'm happy to be able to vote for those leaders. But happy is not the proper adjective for Memorial Day. It's a day of remembrance. It's a holiday, but unlike all others, it is not a joyful day. Instead, it is a day of solemn remembrance for all of the fallen military and all of the wars, police actions that involve this country. The following is an excerpt of remarks presented to an assembly of folks in Omaha, Nebraska on April 27, 2013, by Major General William Grimsley, who was in that year Chief of Staff of the U.S. Strategic Command. He said, "Thank you for inviting me to join you today during this Memorial Day of Remembrance at this beautiful park on a beautiful day. Every time I visit the park, I walk by each panel of the original monuments to read the names of the local heroes lost in World War II, and then stop by the statue of the soldier and small child with the names of those lost and missing from Korea and Vietnam, which hopefully will someday also contain the names of the over 60 Nebraskans lost from our most recent conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan. Omaha and the surrounding communities have borne a large burden of our nation's fallen from the Civil War forward, so it's fitting and right that we honor them all, recognizing that our liberties as Americans come at a price. I think those men and women who, so long ago, imagined this holiday we now call Memorial Day. Know what they were doing when they designated this time of the year as our time to honor the fallen. It is a time of renewal and strength after a long winter that they must have imagined, they must have imagined all of the flowers in bloom, 1 million or more representing those lost in battles here and almost every continent around the globe. They must have imagined the opportunity to tell the stories of the past to the American people, who will pass these stories on to the children of tomorrow. Maybe that's what the soldier in the statue is pointing out to the child. Today we gather at cemeteries, monuments, and parks all over the country. Marching parades in cities big and small, from Hawaii to Virginia, North Dakota to Texas, and we watch the annual Memorial Day concert on television. We do these things to honor the loyalty and bravery of our fallen in this noble calling, military service. While this day is typically spent recalling the valor of men and women who died in combat, we must never forget those quiet professionals who answered this noble calling to serve the people of the United States in peacetime as well. The history of our nation and those who served can be summed up in a short and simple yet fitting phrase. They are ordinary people who, by virtue of their service and sacrifice, are extraordinary people. Men like Army Chaplain Captain Emil Cuppaw, who grew up on a farm in Filson, Kansas. His first calling was to God. God, he said, called him into the military service. So he joined the army. Captain Cuppaw was sent to Korea in 1950 to provide comfort and counsel to the troops as a chaplain during the first months of the Korean War. The soldiers quickly realized he was much more than just a chaplain. He was their soldier saint. On All Saints' Day, his unit came under heavy attack by Chinese forces. Cuppaw had the chance to fall back to safety with a portion of his unit, but he chose to stay to the thick and the battle to administer to the dying and the wounded. He would brave a barrage of bullets, bounding from foxhole to foxhole to check his boys. Over and over again, he risked his life to retrieve the wounded or the bodies of the fallen. When the wounded were beyond saving, he gave them spiritual comfort. Despite finally being captured and in the midst of being marched away by a Chinese soldier at gunpoint, Cuppaw saw an enemy soldier with his weapon drawn and moments away from executing an American soldier. He defiantly left his captor, pushed his enemy soldier to the ground, and picked up the American soldier up from a ditch. The enemy troops were so stunned, they didn't react. Cuppaw and Miller spent the remainder of their time in the war interned in the prison of war camp in North Korea, where Captain Cuppaw died there in 1951. He was posthumously presented the Medal of Honor by the President at the White House on April the 12th of that year. What's amazing about this story is Cuppaw did not shoulder a rifle or wield a bayonet. He carried a Bible and holy water These were his weapons that he used in battle, and they were more effective than the bullets of a determined enemy. His death was a tragedy, but his life is what we must honor and learn from. welcome to our guest minister, Reverend Daniel Gregoire. Excuse my lousy pronunciation.
No, that was actually pretty good.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is the minister of the Unitarian Universalist Society of Grafton in Upton, Massachusetts. I was disappointed he lost his Boston accent when he came here. He's a graduate of the celebrated Union Theological Seminary in New York City and has served congregations in New York, Maryland, and Pennsylvania. He and his wife, Kate, live in North Grafton, Massachusetts. He tells me that he's on fire for Unitarian Universalism and enjoys Victorian architecture, Haitian cuisine, Walt Whitman's writings, early Western music, mindful meditation, and ritual studies. Welcome, Reverend Daniel Gregoire, or Reverend Daniel, as he prefers to be called.
Thank you so much. For our call to worship, I invite us to hear these words. Come into this place of sacred memory and remember. Come into this place of faith and of healing and of hope. Come into this place of peace and be restored. Come into the presence of beauty and encounter all that is good, all that is holy. It is in this place that we celebrate the life that is our lives together. So let us worship together.
If you have a chalice at home, I invite you to join me in its lighting. We light this chalice of our living tradition to these words, and with our hearts focused on the refugees from and the people still in the Ukraine. To face the world's shadows, a chalice of light. To face the world's coldness, a chalice of warmth. To face the world's terrors, a challenge of courage. To face the world's turmoil, a challenge of peace. May its glow fill the spirits, the hearts, and the lives here, and especially the lives of the suffering. Would you join me, please, with the hymn number 38, Morning Has Broken.
Morning
Please join me in affirming our mission. First Unitarian Church of Wilmington is a beloved community that nourishes minds and spirits, fights injustice, and transforms the world through loving action.
I invite you to join me in a time of prayer and meditation. Spirit of life and love, Spirit of power and of wonder, we gather as a community with blessings that we bring with us and burdens that we all carry. Our nation right now carries the awful weight of mourning for the innocent lives of children lost in an attack on a school in Texas, a nation still in mourning for the lives lost at a grocery store in upstate New York. Companioning presence gives solace and comfort to all of the survivors in all of the communities shattered by senseless violence. Holy One, have mercy on us all. Heal all that is broken in our society, especially those broken aspects that allow such terrors to be visited on communities again and again. Holy One, forgive us for our carelessness. Forgive us for our wanton selfishness that allows such tableaus of horror to be projected onto the landscape. Remember to us all the lives lost in the service to our country on this Memorial Day and every day. Comfort to all the grieving parents of young people whose lives are lost in battle. Spirit of life and love, quench our appetites for dominion and control. Cool our tempers and our egos. Cool those things with the waters of righteousness. Help us to find compassion. Help us to be compassionate. Help us to express that compassion without limits or boundaries. Divine life, hasten the day when wars might be fought no more. Hasten the day when peace and understanding might prevail in all the lands, including this one. Do this so that we can truly appreciate the wonder of this world, so that we can live together in the beauty that is beloved community. We pray for these things and so much more in the sacred silence. Let us be silent together. Blessed be. Thank you, and amen. Each week we pause to attend to the concerns of our own hearts, to mention those that we care about and those in the world that we are concerned with. Take a moment now to reflect on those concerns. Now, if you would like, you may speak the names or the concerns aloud in this sanctuary or write them in the chat. May all of those names, spoken and those unspoken, find peace and healing and comfort on this day. Blessed be, and amen. Our reading this morning comes from the 20th century British writer and theologian C.S. Lewis from his work titled The Weight of Glory. This reading is adapted. We do not merely want to see beauty. though God knows that that is bounty enough, we want something else that can hardly be put into words, to be united with the beauty we see, to pass into it, to receive it into ourselves, to bathe in it, to become a part of it. That is why we have peopled the air, the earth, the waters with gods and goddesses, nymphs and elves. That though we cannot, yet these projections can enjoy that beauty, grace, and power of which nature is the image. That is why the poets tell us such falsehoods. They talk as if the west wind could really slip into the human soul. But it can't. They tell us that beauty born of murmuring sound will pass into the human face, but it won't. Or not yet. For if we take the imagery of Scripture seriously, if we believe that God will one day give us the morning star and cause us to put on the splendor of the sun, then we may surmise that both the ancient myths and the modern poetry, so false a history, may be very near the truth as prophecy. Here ends our reading. Just allow me a moment to adjust my notes here. We want to be united with the beauty that we see, to pass into it, to receive it into ourselves, to become a part of it. I want us to hold on to those words. Now, I bring greetings from the Worcester Hills and the very beautiful Blackstone River Valley in Massachusetts. My wife, Kate, and I are delighted to visit with you at the invitation of my good friend, Reverend Larry Pierce. This is my first time preaching in this pulpit, but I am familiar with this church building. Some years ago, I lived in Annapolis and in Philadelphia, and I served on the best committee ever. You don't hear that very often, but this truly is the best committee ever. This was a committee of the Joseph Priestley District, a district that no longer exists because the UUA has moved to a different organizational structure. But this committee, again, the best committee ever, was known as the Chalice Lighter Committee. The Chalice Lighter, some of you may know this, was tasked with awarding financial grants to UU churches that pooled their money together for this particular program. The monies for the Chalice Lighter program were used to retrofit older buildings with such things as accessibility ramps, wheelchair lifts, and elevators. The grants were also used to assist congregations with expanding or enlarging their buildings for the purpose of drawing in new members or to reflect the growth in membership that churches were already experiencing. The Chalice Lighters, and I hope that it still exists, was an amazing, amazing committee, and I was so proud to be a member of it. Being a Chalice Lighter really impressed upon me the importance and the special power of place. The power of churches as places where people can gather, spaces to encounter the holy human spirit. Something more is that on that committee, I realized, or it further was confirmed for me, the power of beauty and the beauty of our Unitarian Universalist spaces. A power and a beauty that is strong enough to save. Now, I left the Chalice Lighter Committee when I moved out of the area to accept the call of a church in New England. But the power of our sacred spaces and the importance of celebrating and preserving them is something that has never left me. Fast forward 10 years. The COVID-19 pandemic is raging across the globe. And in its raging, it has reminded all of us, yet again, of the power of places. Many of these places that are powerful for us, we have been absent from for 2 or more years now. The power of places just like this church is what I want to call our attention to yet again. You see, there's a great danger in this particular moment. And this moment is helping us, in a way, to forget the power of places. We've come to think of places as interchangeable, as reducible, as places that can easily be replicated through the magic of television or the simulation of virtual realities, the metaverse, for example. We forget the genius of place, the special power, the spirit of place. And so it is important that we come back to places. Yes, this is an appeal to come back to church, if that is a reasonable thing for you, if reasonable accommodations can be made. If you're coming to sacred places such as this does not jeopardize your health or the health of those in your household, then it is important to return. We can almost hear the way that these places call out to us. Return again, return to the home of your soul. Return again, return again. Return to the home of your soul. These are the words we might recognize from a very familiar hymn that we sing around the time of the Jewish high holidays in the fall. Return to what you are, return to who you are, return to where you are born and reborn again. Return to this place, a place such as this. Come back if that is within your ability to do, or continue to join us from the virtual space, if returning is not indeed possible for you. But I believe in this moment there is a great danger, again, one of the great monuments, great detriments of our modern life, one made worse by the COVID-19 pandemic, and one further exacerbated by the culture of violence in America, is that we spend so much time alone. We spend so much time isolated and afraid. This is one of the great detriments of modern life, particularly in the United States, the fact that we spend so much time alone, so much time isolated, so much time afraid. And one of the ways that way of living is manifested is the fact that we spend so much of our time in very, very small spaces. And that's true even if we live in a house that is 4,000 square feet or in a studio that is 300 square feet. The spaces that we spend so much of our time in are designed on a very, very small scale, a very small and constrictive, albeit safe, domestic scale. These spaces are the very embodiments of the finite and the mundane in their very basic proportions. What we need in our lives is large spaces, brave spaces, spaces that are built on, dare I say it, the cosmic scale. Spaces that are beautiful. We need spaces that excite our imaginations, physical locations that point us to the largest possible realities. Realities even beyond our abilities to imagine. Now, some commercial spaces do this. The arenas of shopping or entertainment or even sporting might try to imitate the grandeur and the majesty of sacred spaces. Just yesterday, my wife and I were in Longwood Gardens, one such space that tries to evoke the majesty and the grandeur of the natural world in the built environment. But these spaces will always fall short. They will always reveal the conceit of their coercions. There is that coercive element in these spaces, these commercial and entertainment spaces. They're always luring us out with their loveliness, but that loveliness is for a price. But there is one such place that offers us so much loveliness, a loveliness that is in fact beyond all price. And I have found that place, and that place sings to my soul. It is a place that is built on a far larger scale, a place that is powerful enough to collapse the past, the present, and the future all into one singularity. And that place, you might be able to guess, is the church. And more specifically, it's a New England Meetinghouse. It is a Unitarian Universalist church, but more specifically, the Meetinghouse in New England. Now, I've been the minister of Grafton and Upton in Massachusetts for 6 years now, and I have the privilege of serving a congregation that meets in an 1860s building right in the center of Grafton. I'm the first minister of color and the youngest minister in the last few generations. And this church has a 300-year history. The meeting house that we see today on Grafton Common is the third building to occupy that site. The two previous buildings were either dismantled or burnt down. But a meeting house has been on that site since 1728. This building is everything you imagine it to be. It is very much an archetype of place, which is to say that the way that this particular meeting house looks, the image of it is something that we all have deeply encoded into our collective consciousness and unconscious. But I'm going to go ahead and describe it for you in brief detail. It is indeed a white steepled building, and there are granite stairs in the very front of it that take you up to large double doors. Once you pass those doors, there are another set of stairs on either side that take you up into the sanctuary. There you find yourself in a white and light meeting room with double-hung windows on either side, and the focal point of that room is a pulpit that is high but not too high. It actually looks like a mahogany desk. Below this desk are pews, and there are pews facing it. These pews are remarkably comfortable because of the red velvet cushions that have been lovingly sewn. This space takes my breath away. It did when I first saw it, and it still does 6 years later. This room, this sanctuary, is my sanctuary. From a purely architectural standpoint, it isn't very remarkable. In terms of its aesthetics, very minimalist. The room is large and simple. Some might say elegant, but I think most might say uninteresting. There is a minimum of ornamentation, and most of what we see is somewhat dated. It's classical, it's columns and capitals. For a little bit of bling, they're brass light fixtures. What you won't see in the sanctuary of my meeting house is any stained glass. You won't see any saints or relics. There are no gargoyles. There are no scepters or shields, no crosses or mitres. My church, like so many of our worship spaces, like this one, is plain, almost to the point of being utilitarian. But these worship spaces are very practical vessels for a kind of unnamed vastness. They contain a holy emptiness. The bare walls and the clear glass windows bear witness to something that is elusive and diffuse. The bright lights in our spaces are an aid and help us in the darkness of the world. Light passes through these spaces and illuminates everything in it. and perhaps even everyone in them. These spaces are the blank canvases on which we can project our image of the divine, whatever that image is for us. The meeting house is really the meeting ground, the actual place where we all encounter the holy, however we choose to define the holy. For me, the holy is transcendent, beyond all description and image. God, or the spirit of life, what I find in this meeting house, sometimes I call that thing beauty. Beauty is what I find there. And for me, beauty is safety. Beauty is anchoring myself in the world. It is a commitment to being present and aware of the wonder and delight that surrounds us. And that can be true for all of us. Beauty is power enough to save. Part of my growing up in the inner city of New York in the 1980s and 90s, part of my growing up there, I formed this image in my mind, this idea that beauty indicated safety. And perhaps that's true for many who grow up in the inner city. If you can imagine the rough and tumbled landscapes of divestment and white flight, abandoned apartment buildings, public schools in disrepair, the decay of violence, gang and drug-induced violence, as well as the systemic violence that sustains all of those things. You can easily see how beauty found in the natural world or the built environment could be a ready means of escape from that kind of landscape. This was the time and the era of broken windows theory, where disrepair really meant danger. Broken windows theory. So for me, finding a vast public space, a great hall, like the Great Hall at Grand Central Station, or the nave of St. John the Divine, even the Dime Savings Bank on Church Avenue in Brooklyn, or the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens, some vast space where I could connect with the dignity of my smallness to something larger. These spaces connected me to something bigger, a sense of hope, a sense of possibility, but most importantly, a sense of being part of a larger story, a story that is more expansive than the small and the chaotic domestic spaces that I had what I would describe as the mixed fortune of being born into. My old home in New York and my new home in Massachusetts are quite different, as I'm sure you can imagine. But in both places, I seek out beauty and find it. In our reading, we hear the words of the 20th century British novelist and theologian C.S. Lewis. Many of us are familiar with his writings, the most famous of which, the Chronicles of Narnia. He writes these words, "We do not merely want to see beauty. We want something else that can hardly be put into words. We want to be united with the beauty that we see, to pass into it, to receive it unto ourselves, to bathe in it, to become a part of it." This beauty that we wish to see, to take into ourselves, to be enveloped in, is not just aesthetics. It's not just an aesthetic quality. It's not just what is cute or fashionable or even exciting. This beauty that we want and need is vast. It's on an order and a magnitude that approaches the infinite. The beauty that we seek and find in these spaces is inextricably connected to the very principles of our faith, especially our seventh principle, which is our most cosmologically oriented principle. Our seventh principle reminds us, as Unitarian Universalists, reminds us that we are part of a web of life. But when I hear that we're part of a web of life, what that says to me is that in essence, we belong to something beautiful. Our seventh principle calls to us to respect the inherent web of all existence of which we are a part. Again, we belong to something vast and powerful, something beautiful. I am saved. I am rescued from a world mired in violence and isolation and desperation by the knowledge that every time I return to the meeting house, every time I cross the threshold of the church and enter with my fellow parishioners into our sanctuary, that it is all for an encounter with beauty. An encounter with beauty itself. A beauty that exceeds our ability to name or describe. A beauty that is beyond all description. And perhaps the great mystery of this beauty is the source of its power over us. We can't fully name it, but it compels us to leave our homes, to leave the normal behind, to join with other people in recreating beloved community. These light-filled spaces point us towards something magical, a kind of heaven on earth. And these places, most of all, allow us to rehearse the parts we wish to play in this new world that we are creating. So you could say that Kate and I drove for over 6 hours to come here and tell you to love your church, to love your faith community, to love the beauty of your meeting house, and to remember the ways that this particular place connects you to something larger. And just being here for an hour, I can tell you that I can feel that presence of something larger here. It is good for you to return to your home, the home of your soul. And however you do it, know that here there is room enough and beauty enough to save. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen.
The following are words of Mark Frost, who joined the UUA in the role of Director of Youth and Youth Adult Ministries and served from 2014 to 2019. In December of 2015, he said, "One of the best things about church is that it is an intentional community where you can live your values. In a world where almost everything is based on a traditional fee-for-service system, church is the one place where things operate differently. A church shares its services with you joyfully until you decide that you feel ready to give joyfully back. Giving is an important part of the mutual relationship we have with our churches and with all of the people in our faith." Also hear the words of Mother Teresa. "It is not how much we give, but how much love we put into giving." And finally, the words of a neighbor. "Remember, it's not what you give, but what you scatter that tells what kind of life you have lived." On your screen, please note the 4 ways there are to give to this church, and we thank you in advance for your generosity. Now, if you would, please join me in our dedication to the work of this congregation, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action. We dedicate our loves and these our offerings.
For our closing words, I offer this benediction by Bruce Southworth. And let us remember this, that whatever it is we dream we can do or believe we can do, we can begin it this day. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it, so let us be bold in our living and in our loving, bold in our giving and in our forgiving, so that the world awaited might become more nearly the world attained. Go in peace and be a blessing.
As we extinguish the flame of the chalice, hear the words of Martha Munson. We extinguish the chalice here that it might glow gently in your heart. May it light your path as you leave this place. May it guide your way until we are together again.